Hi y'all, and welcome back to the garden. And must I tell you that I am literally exhausted and I've not even started. I want to introduce you to one of my littlest dogs that I've had for about 8 years now. I don't know if he's been in a video before. I think he may have been in one. His name's Lewis, and he is a little Dachshund. And he is loving this new property. Lewis is not much of an outside dog. He's very much go outside, go potty, come back inside. But all of this new land has made him very curious. Lewis, do you want to say hey? Lewis is real sweet. He doesn't have much of thought in his head though. He's a real good boy. Come on, come on. So I'm going to take y'all down to further in the driveway and show you some things I want to work on. That's not really a priority right now. This will probably be something next year, or it might be something I have to tackle this fall, at least to cut back. But I want to show you a few things on the property, and we'll talk a little bit about what my goals are and my priorities are for this fall. So up here at the beginning of the property, there's two very old burning bushes, one here and one here on either side, and they're really like encroaching into the driveway. And this is a rather skinny driveway anyway, just enough for one car. So they need to be severely cut back. You can actually cut these to the ground and they will come back fresh. They're pretty resilient, but burning bushes are not my favorite thing. I think they used to be overused, and they can be pretty in the fall, but otherwise there's not a whole lot to them. So these will probably be removed eventually, but a priority this fall will be to get them cut back so they're not scratching the cars as people come in. You can see they've been trimmed pretty regularly here, but just generally cutting them back pretty hard this fall is going to be a priority. I may even cut them to the ground this fall and let them come back a little fresh in the spring till I can tackle this area a little better. At the front of the property next to the road, I eventually want to do a berm here, or not necessarily a berm, but a lot of mixed plantings with lots of trees to add a little more privacy to the front. And we'll go back up to the front or the back of the property and show you some other things that I hope to work on here soon. It's really cloudy today, which I'm covering my microphone. These are great days to shoot videos, but it's also really windy, and so that doesn't really mesh well when you have a microphone you need to be recording video with. But I'm going to try and protect it a little bit as we walk around the property. And right now I'm kind of at a point where I don't really know where to start. If you've been following my channel for very long, you know I'm pretty meticulous in my planning, in my design. There's a lot of thought that goes into it, a lot of thought on the varieties and selections. But something I struggle with quite a bit and have my entire life is visualizing spaces when there's just a lot of other stuff there. And so I think my priority is going to have to be to get everything out before I can actually see the space, visualize the space empty, and put plants or select plants to go into that space. I don't think I would be a very good landscape designer for a regular job, because a lot of times those people have to come in and, you know, see what people already have in place and design with that stuff in place, potentially removing things. So I'm not great with that. And I don't think any customer would be like, you want to remove all my stuff before you give me a design? And stuff don't always all need to be removed, but oftentimes some stuff does need to be removed. I'm not going to have many boxwoods in this new garden, I don't think, which, as a southerner, you know, a very English style garden, I really love. But we have recently discovered in our area the boxwood moth, which is fairly new, I think, and I have noticed severe detriment to some boxwoods locally, and I don't want to spend both the time and the money putting a lot of those in if just in a few years there's going to be a huge problem in this area. So I'm going to have to find some alternatives. I would typically use arborvitae, but there may be a deer issue here, and deer tend to like arborvitae. So I might have to find something that is a little more deer resistant, that the deer won't munch on. Now there's hostas around everywhere here, and I've not noticed a whole lot of munching on the plants from deer. Not to say that there hasn't been any or won't be any. There's also just lots of other stuff they can, you know, chew on around here, including fields of corn, which I'm hoping with the corn nearby that they'll enjoy the corn and not my ornamental garden. Little Lewis, where's he at? Come on, let's go. Come on, Lewis. He's so quick. I'm going to take you back here and show you a couple things that I didn't show you in the last video. One of them is a rose of Sharon, and you'll understand after seeing it why there's been some focus by some plant companies on breeding smaller rows of Sharons, because I've never even seen one this big, I don't think. It's really incredible, but also makes me think this one day will probably need to come out, just because it's not exactly super attractive to me, and it's kind of hidden in the backyard here. But look how tall this thing is. Very tall, and it's been blooming for a very long time, and it's actually a double. You can see there. So it's actually really pretty, might stay. There's a tree kind of growing into it here that will probably need to come out. So it would be pretty as a standalone, but being, you know, kind of combined with this tree, not the best. You can see how excited Lewis is. This little guy doesn't do much running. But he's a good boy. Makes me smile so big to see the dogs so happy on the new property. All right, I had to let Lewis in because he was getting a little rowdy and hard to keep my eye on. One of the first things I'm going to be doing the next couple weeks is removing these trees. The good thing about having property, so we can cut them down ourselves, cut them up, and drag them back to the back, and use them for firewood maybe over time. And so I mentioned that in the last video, and someone said not to burn it in the fireplace. I don't have a wood burning fireplace. I wouldn't own a house with a wood burning fireplace. I have really sensitive allergies, and wood burning and wood smoke really triggers that. And this area I mentioned would be in the last video, great space for a vegetable garden. I think that's the route I'm going to proceed here. And I think what I'm going to do now, just to prep a space for next year, because it's much too late to do anything this year, at least planting vegetable wise. I could get started, but I want to choke out this grass, and tarping it is probably going to be the best method of doing that. So I got to decide what size section I want to do, but I might tarp the entire side here around this barn, mainly because if I need to fence it in, it would be nice to have the barn as a backdrop. Since I don't know what the deer pressure is going to be right now, I can just come right to the edge here and put a fence up if I needed to. And whether that helps deer pressure or not, I don't know. Never been one that had to deal a whole lot with deer, and I know deer will get into about anything if they're hungry enough. So everything's not deer proof. They could even jump this fence if they wanted to. But this is where I'm probably going to be putting a lot of my hydrangeas until I get a better idea of what the deer pressure is going to be. And in this area as well, I had a lot of people mention sheet mulching, which is what I did in my last garden. If you've been following along, I guess that was about, my channel's been operational for about 2.5 years. And when I was expanding the backyard, almost entirely, well, I guess actually all of it was sheet mulching. So you put down cardboard. I like to use, in my case, I'll be using cardboard because I have some from the move and I can acquire more that I'll need. But I also like to use like that painter's paper for smaller spaces, and it works really well for me. You can get different thicknesses. A thicker variety is nice. It depends on how aggressive your grass is, obviously, that you're trying to cover up. But I think a lot of these perennials, some are about done blooming, especially the invasive ones. I'm going to cut them really low to the ground, and then I might sheet mulch on top of them. It's another issue I'm having. Until I get a chip drop, which I've ordered. You know, if you've done chip drops before, you don't know when they will be delivered. I've seen, you can look at a map though and see when other people around you have had chip drops delivered. And I've had some that say, you know, one day they got it delivery. Well, it's already been over a week for me, and some say 3 weeks. I've seen some say are like almost 3 months. And so I don't want to do a whole lot of weeding until I have wood chips here, because if I do a bunch of weeding, then I'm not going to have anything to cover up those weeds or the beds immediately, and then I'm just going to have to weed again. So I think my idea right now is probably going to be just to cut things down really low, potentially mow them completely over, at least the grassy areas. Like this is completely grass. There's no substantial perennials in this area. It could be completely mowed down, and I could keep it mowed and at least suppressed, the weeds suppressed, until I get some chips in. I'm also in the mode of just don't die. All of the plants and planters that I brought from my other house that was on drip irrigation and watered regularly, we finally had rain today. It's not rained since we got access to this property almost two weeks ago. Anything substantial, and we got a little bit of rain today. I don't feel like it was very much, because I'm not familiar with how this property drains yet. You know, my other property had issues with drainage because of the heavy clay soil. I haven't tested the soil yet, hadn't had an opportunity to, but I'm trying just to keep everything in my containers alive right now and getting sufficient water, which could be a problem. I don't know, we'll see. I've got these little things right here, which I showed you earlier this summer. I put on a container. After using these for a couple months, I think it's probably been closer to 3 months now, my overall review of them is that I absolutely love them. Great devices if you, for like the patio gardener, if you don't have access to a water source nearby, and I don't. 3 of the hose bibs on my house, 2 of them are leaking really bad and can't be used. They might have to be replaced. The plumbers came out and said they might be able to order parts because they no longer make those. So they're going to try and get it operational, but I can't have a garden without any type of irrigation right now. So I'm just trying this, you know, these little devices pull water from any water source, and this actually is really pretty right now. I dumped some of that Maxi fertilizer in here. The good thing about these little things, since they pull from any water source, you can actually add fertilizer to the water. And so this Maxi is great for roses, and that's what I bought it for. But I was like, you know what, I'll just add it to this bucket that I'm trying to get these things watered, and we'll see how it does. So these things, I think I've maxed out the potential of what they can water. I'm trying to check to see if any water's coming out of these drippers. There were some coming out of some of the top ones, but I think I had maxed out the potential of how much they could pump water. So I've got them running in tandem. One of them, the battery's dead though, because I just brought it out of the box. So I'll give you an update on these and see how they do, and see how successful they are. They worked really well when I was running one container on it. I think it said I could run a total of 20 containers on the packaging. And I'll put a link to these below if you're interested in them. They're solar powered. The batteries are rechargeable and replaceable, which is nice. And they worked really well for me all summer until I moved. Thing with these containers are there are so many drippers on these individual planters that there's probably upwards of probably 50 gallons per hour, not quite that much going emitters. So that's a lot of pressure that these pumps have to put out. And so I don't know that it's going to be able to pump to all of them, but we'll give it a test and see how it works. Also, just to end this, here's the thing about taking over a new garden. Generally, you'll hear everyone say, wait a year. That means so you can see everything that comes up on the property. That way you know what needs to be removed. A lot of that has depended on like bulbs and that type thing. So you can wait a year and see spring when the bulbs come up, when the perennials flush and that type thing, in case you have anything that may just come up in spring and then is ephemeral and dies down when it gets warm. I'm not going to take that approach, mainly because a year is a long time in a garden. And I know what I want to remove. I know what I don't like. And waiting a year is just going to put all of that further behind when I could be planting some beautiful things potentially this fall. I'm hoping I'll be able to clean up some stuff enough to plant this fall. And they will be just a whole year ahead, and at least a season ahead instead of waiting till spring. I've got to at least get all the things that Proven Winners generously gave me when I went to Michigan last month in the ground this fall in some beds. I think I'm going to focus a lot on the backyard. I'm probably going to go ahead and pull the shrubs that are in the front yard as well, or the front flower beds, because there's not much there. There's 6 or 7 things that I need to pull out, and I'll walk you along through that process of how I'm going to do that. But I'm going to call it quits on this video today because it's getting super windy and I don't want to have audio issues where you can't hear me. Thank you guys for following along, and be patient with me as I figure out what I'm doing here, because there's a lot to tackle and I want to do it as quickly but also most efficiently as possible. Thanks for joining in, guys, and remember, in a world full of hate, be a light. Take care. Bye.